Hey, Shelley, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Brooke.
That sounds pretty good.
Yep, you sound fine.
Okay, whoops. I'm going to try to share my screen real quick. Can you see that?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, great.
Just remember, Brooke, you want to make it a slideshow, so you don't see the title. The actual.
Right.
Can you hear me okay, Shelley?
I can hear you.
Cool. All right, I want to try to share my screen just to make sure that will be okay here.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Can somebody talk to me to make sure that my speaker is working?
Hi, Randy.
Hi. Means I need to turn it up.
Do you want me to? I could just yell.
Well, it's a long ways to yell. Thank you.
I only count, I don't know if I can see everyone. Okay, that's better. Shelley, how many board members do we have tonight?
It looks like we have everybody but Rieger. So 6.
6, perfect.
Oh, he's here. So
Oh, 7.
7.
All right.
And it looks like we're waiting for the applicants for the first case still
Yep.
going in.
Okay, no worries. I'm just trying to get my ducks in a row here. So Shelley, do you want to go ahead and get started, and we could do the approval of the minutes and finding a fact while we're waiting?
Sure. I'll go ahead and get started
Perfect.
with the roll call.
Yeah, so what we'll do is once they join, we can kind of the first break we can update them. But so I'll call the meeting to order of Adjustment and Appeals for City of Inglewood to order. Ms. Warwick, if you could take the roll, please.
Mr. Rieger,
Present.
Ms. Schmitz,
Present.
Mr. Friesen,
Present.
Mr. Thompson,
Present.
Mr. Taylor,
Present.
Ms. Hoffman,
Present.
Chair Finn.
Present. All right, so we have 7 present. First on the agenda, approval of minutes from August 12th, 2020. I need a motion and a second.
I move to approve the minutes from, sorry.
I believe they're from August 12th.
Thank you, August 12th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any abstentions because you were not present? All right. All in favor of approval of the minutes?
Tom, I have a question here, actually.
Oh, yes, sir.
On the approval of the minutes, it shows on the vote On the motion, that 6 were for and 1 abstained. But when we get to our findings of fact, it shows it as 6 for and 1 against.
So,
And Andy, I believe you were the one that it shows you as abstaining
Yeah,
in the meeting minutes.
yep, okay. So that is correct, the 6-1. And then what are you, the motion to approve the variance?
My question is whether it was an abstention or a vote against
For,
from Mr. Taylor.
I abstained in the minutes, but I don't think we had a,
There was no finding of
Finding.
facts.
yeah. Yeah, so the second thing was the case.
Okay.
it does look like the vote is different between the findings of fact and the minutes.
Right.
So in the minutes, it's showing Kristen voted for, but in the findings of fact, it's showing she voted against.
I voted against it.
Yeah,
Do we
so
need
we
to
need to
adjust
correct
them?
that.
Yeah, I'll get that corrected.
Okay, so with that correction, are there any other concerns or comments? All right, so with that correction, we already have a motion and a second. So we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so that the minutes from August 12th, 2020 is adopted. The approval finding of fact with the stated correction. I need to get and this is the finding of fact for case VAR 2020-004 3135 South Grant Street. I need a motion and a second.
I move to approve the findings of fact for case VAR 2020-004 at 3135 South Grant Street.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so the approval of finding of fact is approved. Shelley has the first, have they joined?
Or can you verify if your applicants are online? Brooke, you muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a participant line and a attendees line, and they were under attendees, but now they're not. I know they were having some problems and they're trying to join from their phone.
Is the Chaz Galaxy, is that
Yes,
applicants?
yes,
All
there
right,
they are.
so if we have the applicants, are we ready to proceed then with the first case?
We are.
Okay, perfect. So I will open the public hearing for the first case. There are 7 members present, therefore 5 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begin with 180 days of the variance effective date. Procedure for the meeting is the case will be introduced. An overview will be given by staff. Applicant will present their request and reasons for the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board if there are any, and if needed, staff can address the board again. The public hearing for case VAR 2020-005. Karl Palmquist, the property is 2740 South Pennsylvania Street. The applicant is requesting a variance for a residential addition to encroach 1 foot 9 inches into the required 5 foot side setback in the R1C zone district. We have been sent verification of the publication and posting of the subject property. If anyone has any questions about that. Otherwise, staff, if you could give us an overview.
Rick, if you're gonna raise your right hand, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you would tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
My name is Brooke Bell with the Community Development Department, City of Inglewood. Thank you, board members. I'm going to try and share my screen here, so bear with me for just a moment. Let's see here. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. As was previously mentioned, this is case VAR 2020-005 at 2740 South Pennsylvania Street. The variance request is for a residential addition to encroach 1 foot 9 inches into the required 5 foot setback in an R1C zone district. That is a variance to table 16-6-1.1 of the Inglewood Municipal Code. So the property for this first case tonight is located at 2740 South Pennsylvania Street, which is in the northern part of the city, just 1 block south of Yale at the Denver border. It's in the mid block on the east side of the block. It is the property is approximately 50 feet wide by 133 feet deep, which is a little deeper than normal because there is no alley. And as you can see, the existing house, and if you can see my cursor, is located towards actually the rear of the property and pushed fairly close to the south property line. And then this other structure you see to the north of it is a detached garage. The house was built in 1940, but not annexed into the city until 1953. The property is approximately 6,650 square feet. The existing house is 730 square feet. It's a single family residence. What is being proposed is a 636 square foot addition to that single family dwelling. This next slide is a improvement survey plat showing again the 1-story residence, single family home that is approximately 3.3 feet off the south property line. And then you can see to the west of it, the proposed addition, which is pretty much in line with the existing house. This next slide is just another part of the construction drawings showing the proposed addition. And So I'll just go through some of the criteria in the staff report for this particular edition. I do actually have a couple more slides of the existing house and some elevations showing the existing and the proposed house or addition, I should say. So you see in this plan view, the existing house, and then basically the addition is just building onto the front of that. And it's still going to remain one story. It's not a large addition, but it will help bring at least the appearance of the house a little closer to the street, which is something that if you look back at these other at this aerial view, you can see where the house to the south is and to the north is much further up. So this will bring this, the addition will bring this property a little to appear a little closer to the street. What makes this property unique is obviously the location of the existing structure towards the rear of the lot. They are proposing to add straight onto the front and maintain that 3.3 foot setback, which would be encroaching 1 foot 9 inches approximately into the south side setback. In order to meet the setback, the addition would have to be pushed to the north, which would close up. Not only would it not follow the symmetry of the existing house, but it would also push the addition closer to the garage and sort of close off this breezeway partially. I did want to mention one other thing, and that is we had a neighbor notification that was in your packet that incorrectly stated that they're proposing an accessory dwelling unit. They are not. You cannot have an attached accessory dwelling unit. And that neighbor notification has since been updated. That was emailed out. And that's the next slide I'm showing you. It was corrected to say construct a residential addition that encroaches 1 foot 9 inches into the required 5 foot setback. Staff is recommending approval of this variance. We don't see it as a self-imposed difficulty. The house was constructed in 1940 and wasn't under Inglewood zoning at that time. It was not annexed into the city until 1953. With that, I'd be happy to open it up to any questions.
Does the board have any questions for staff at this point?
Is the neighbor notification lot the one just south of the subject property?
That is correct.
Mr. Bell, what's the, is it a 5 foot setback on the house that's south from the property line to where their house is? Do we know what that distance is?
Let me see here. I do not know what that distance is. You can see in the survey that's up on the shared screen right now, it does not dimension that. It does look about the same. It does look about the same. And back when some of these houses were built, even if they weren't yet annexed into the city of Inglewood, it was fairly common in some areas to have 3 foot setbacks. So I would imagine that the neighbor's house to the south is plus or minus 3 feet. Just graphically, I know I can probably see it bigger on my screen than everybody else's, but it looks like it's about 3 feet.
Other questions for staff at this point from the board? I think there's no other questions from staff from the board at this time. So if the applicant could come forward to testify in the case, and if you could please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
We're not gonna. Hello, my name is Karl Palmquist. I own the property at 2740 South Pennsylvania. And this whole project came up initially. I wanted to have a bigger kitchen. I have a very small kitchen that was added to the back of this property in about 51, I believe.
Hold on, we need to swear you in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Okay.
Perfect. And not that I didn't believe you about your kitchen, but we need to get you sworn in, and we have the packet that you provided. So if you could kind of give, your reasoning like you were for this, and you can exclude some of the stuff you gave to us because we have that in the packet. Thank you, Mr. Palmquist.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I was wanting to make, the whole project came about of just about making a bigger kitchen. And then I thought, well, let's just add a bathroom and a bedroom to the front. So I'm, in effect, more or less doubling the size of the house and just taking the footprint I have now and setting it up front. So I will have a bigger kitchen. The kitchen I have now has low ceilings and it gets really hot in there in the summer when you cook. So I wanted a bigger kitchen. That was the main impetus for this whole thing. And it is a little, go ahead.
No, please, go ahead, sir.
And like I said, it is a little close to that south boundary line, which is in discrepancy, I guess, but it's been that way for 40, 50 years. So 80 years, whenever they annex, yeah.
Are there questions from the board to the applicant? Go ahead, Randy. You're muted though.
Yeah. I was curious how, because there's not really a floor plan of the existing house, how the two floor plans tie together, what kind of doorway you have in between the kitchen, if you will, to the existing house.
So the front door of the house will now become basically a hallway and just a walk-through. And that was the plan for right now.
I'm sorry, real quick. If you're going to speak, I believe you're Mr. Kruger.
Yep.
Yep. If we could get, we need to get you sworn in.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No sweat. Shelley, if you could swear him in.
Sure. Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address.
Chaz Kruger, 9196 West Phillips Drive, Littleton, Colorado, 80128.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you could continue, I think you were discussing how it was going to tie in.
So we'll be basically removing the front door, and that'll be kind of another breezeway going from the existing house into the new addition. And it'll walk in straight into the kitchen area, and then off to the left will be a bathroom, and then, towards the front of the property will be the bedroom on that same side.
Okay, yeah, so you're basically just using the existing front door, taking it off, and that's your connection to the existing?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have one. So I understand the space between the garage, but if you shifted, what are the hardships if you had to shift this addition?
Essentially the layout of the entire addition would need to be changed or altered more appropriately, because if we're sitting 1'9" and say we shift it to the north 2 feet, this breezeway is probably about 42 inches. I've never put a tape on it, but it's about 42 inches. So it's kind of at that point, then there's not enough clearance in there for anybody to really effectively walk through there. And then, so at that rate, you might as well push it right up to the corner of the garage. And in which case, then you lose that breezeway entirely.
Okay, yeah, on the plans, it appears the distance between the existing house and the existing garage is 4 foot 3 inches.
Okay, so 51.
Yeah. So that's the major concern. There's not you wouldn't, or would you, are you saying you would have to do some, to the interior layout, you'd have to actually subtract some of that. I'm trying to figure out with just the block that I'm looking at, if I just move that 2 feet up, I mean, we would still have the bigger kitchen that Mr. Palmquist is after, and everything else would kind of stay the same.
So really, like, if you're looking at the front door, when you walk out, like the existing front door of the house, when you walk out there, the way the layout was planned was that, like, right to the left-hand side here, as you're walking out into the addition, that wall that's going straight out down the middle of the addition, it's going to be right in line with this front door. So then that whole thing would shift over 2 feet. And that's really the biggest issue with it.
Okay.
It's just access from the addition to the existing house. Between that and the breezeway, yes.
Are there other questions from the board for the applicant at this time?
It looks like the addition's about a foot smaller than the existing house, but there's not a dimension on this, how much it sets off. Is it 6 inches each side, or?
It's supposed, that must be a discrepancy in the plans then, because this is supposed to be flush outside to outside.
Yeah, I think if you look kind of where the windows, I'm assuming those are windows, it shows, I think, what the exterior is. I think the plan that we're seeing is virtually only the interior walls.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were going to do 2x6 frame for the R20 value in the walls.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I was just looking at the dimension of the existing house on A2 and the proposed house. The proposed house, it says, is 24 foot 1 3/4. The existing house, 25.2. And it looks like it offsets 6 inches each side.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it matters, but that's 6 inches different than what might be required.
I can confidently clarify that this is going to be flush with the existing house. So, and I mean, if that's a thing that we have to get clarified in the drawings, that's totally fine. I apologize for that being the way it is, the way you guys have it. But yeah, it's going to be the whole plan this whole time was to do it flush with the existing house.
I think that 24-foot variance was the inside dimension and not the outside dimension.
That would make sense, because if it's 2x6 frame plus the 1/2 inch sheathing on the outside, there's 6 inches on each side.
Are there any other questions for the applicant at this point? I think there are no more questions for the applicant at this time. Thank you, Mr. Kruger and Mr. Palmquist. If we have additional questions, we might come back to you. Shelley, I don't know, has anyone indicated that they want to speak in favor of this request that are on the line somewhere?
I possibly have somebody online. Nancy's downstairs. We'll check with her as well.
Okay.
Good evening, board. There is no one in person to speak for this case.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. It's kind of like phoning a friend.
It is.
Perfect. So there's no one that is going to speak in favor or opposition of this request.
Tom,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Williamson's online. I'm not sure if she's speaking for this case or the next, so we'll check with her.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Miss Williamson, you're on mute.
Hi, yeah, I was going to speak against it when I thought it was going to be an EDU, but when I, heard the facts that it was a mistake, you should give the man his kitchen.
Thank you, Miss Williamson. So I believe that was a opposition change to in favor is
Yes.
what we can mark that
Yep.
down. Perfect. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Staff, do you have any additional comments for us at this time?
I do not, unless there's any further questions for me.
Board, do we have any additional questions for staff? I do not believe so. All right. The public hearing is now closed for this case. Do I have a motion and a second for discussion?
I'll move the case VAR 2020-005, 2740 South Pennsylvania Street be granted a variance to encroach 1 foot 9 inches into the required 5 foot side setback for a residential addition to an existing single family dwelling.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second for discussion. Thoughts? Anyone?
It's always the first criterion, right?
Yep.
Yep. And it seems like we've had similar cases where they're continuing the line of a setback that pre-existed the code, and generally we've had found those meet the first criterion.
That would be my theory.
I mean, I think this one for me is a little bit of a curve because I'm used to having the addition in the back of the house where we follow the line, but now we're moving the house closer up. I don't know if that matters in the big picture, but that's the only thing to give me pause, but it's also still going to be so far back on the lot. I mean, he's giving up I believe it's a football field in his front yard, but the neighbor to the south, and the best I can tell is it will not reach the house that's to the south. So that gives me a little bit more feeling of okay about it.
Yeah, from the looks of it, it goes out about as far as her back wall, or maybe just slightly past, but it doesn't look like it interferes with her windows or anything like that. And the other thing I'd say is that her house appears to be that close too. I mean, it seems like it's kind of the precedent for the neighborhood back in the day.
Yeah.
Randy, I wasn't sure if your line of questions was suggesting that 1 foot 9 inches was not the right measurement.
No, I was just trying to be clear about what they were really asking for and whether it was needed or not. And it sounds like it is.
Yeah, I think Randy was thinking that if it actually did kick up a little, maybe they wouldn't need the variance, but we've had confirmation that it's supposed to be flush. Any other discussion about this? All right, so if there's no discussion, we will vote. I think we don't have buttons, so again, it's just the roll call. Ms. Warwick.
Mr. Rieger,
I voted to approve. I do believe that the first criterion has been met, that there is unique conditions that exist for the structure involved, being that the neighboring homes were built after this home. I do believe the second criterion has been met, that it's consistent with the intent of the zone district. The third criterion has been met, in my opinion, that the variance will not permanently impair the use of the adjacent conforming properties or alter the essential character of the neighborhood. I do believe the fourth criteria has been met, is that the variance must not be a self-imposed difficulty or hardship.
Ms. Schmitz?
I voted yes for the reasons stated, and I'll also say for the first criterion, continuing the existing line for the pre-code setback will simplify the framing and the structural plans, avoid a jog, and won't interfere with the breezeway.
Mr. Friesen?
I voted yes for the reasons stated. I would further add that the existing front door is also defining how they do the addition, and that's another criterion.
Mr. Thompson?
I vote yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Taylor?
Voted yes for the reasons stated.
Ms. Hoffman?
I vote yes for the reasons stated.
Chair Finn?
Oh, he's muted.
I also vote yes for the reasons stated. Was not trying to build up any kind of, excitement with that mute.
Motion passes 7-0.
Perfect. Thank you. So the second case we have 12 screens working, so please bear with me for a moment. All right. Again, there are 7 members present, so 5 votes are required. The public hearing for case number VAR2020-006. The applicant is Cain Property is 4295 South Lincoln Street. They're requesting a waiver from the requirement that a short-term rental be owner-occupied for a property in the R2B zone district. We have verification that was emailed. Staff, if you could please give us an overview.
Sure.
I swear you in, Eric?
Yep.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
State your name, please.
Eric Sampson, planner 2 with City of Englewood. Okay, so I'm going to try to get my screen shared with you guys here. Just give me a second. Okay, can you guys see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so again, this is a variance waiver request for case number VAR2020-006. The applicant is requesting a waiver from the requirement that a short-term rental, STR, be owner-occupied for a property in the R2B zone district. To give you a little bit of background here, the City Council approved short-term rental regulations in February of this year, 2020. And they approved short-term rentals as an allowed use in the residential zone districts as well as medical and mixed use. However, for all the residential districts, areas that weren't in medical districts, they adopted a primary residency requirement, which basically means that if you are the operator of a short-term rental, then the property, you must be the primary resident of the property that you're renting. And so with that, the board also established this waiver process for unique situations regarding the short-term rental regulations. And so they established a set of criteria for the board to take a look at in terms of whether or not to grant a waiver to the primary residency requirement. So just a little overview here. The subject property is 4295 South Lincoln Street. This is in the R2B zone district, kind of sandwiched between MUB2 and R1C residential district in the south part of town. So criteria for approval. One is that special circumstances or conditions peculiar to the peculiar to the specific STR or property owner exist that do not apply generally to all STR businesses or enterprises. Examples of special circumstances may include a property located in a district zoned for commercial or medical uses, property owned and managed by a medical facility or hospitals, or property owned and managed by an abutting property owner, and regularly rented in support of patient care. So while properties in the M1 and mixed use, the medical and mixed use zone districts are exempt from the primary residency requirement, the decision for the waiver was made by City Council for those properties who were explicitly renting to patients of Swedish and or Craig Hospital, largely because these medical facilities are unique to Inglewood as they provide ongoing services for patients who must return on a regular basis for physical therapy, rehabilitation services, and so forth, basically creating a consistent demand for patient lodging. Considering that there are inadequate lodging options around the two medical facilities, City Council felt that those STRs operating outside of the medical district, but providing primary patient lodging or catering to patient hospital visitors and so forth should be able to apply for the waiver for the primary residency requirement. And so while the property in question does look like they do host patients or patient visitors to Inglewood's medical facilities, it doesn't explicitly meet any of the criteria listed above. And there doesn't seem to be any qualifying circumstances or conditions that exist that are different than any other STR properties that would be in the R2B zone district. Oops. So the second criteria for approval established was that the requested waiver from regulations will not weaken the general purpose of the Title V. Which is one thing I should point out, that since this is in Title V and not in Title 16, therefore it becomes a waiver process and not a variance. So going back to that, when we were thinking about this, we really had some concerns that if the board were to grant this variance, it would set a precedent that would be difficult to establish when to approve STR waivers in the future. Again, the intent of the waiver process was to allow for relief from the Title V regulations for properties that were explicitly catering to patient care for the Inglewood medical facilities. Also, the primary residency requirement was established and put in place for the residential zone districts to prevent a situation where you have like a larger company or corporation coming in and buying up a block of houses and just basically using the entire block as a short-term rental. Maybe see short-term rentals. So that was another idea that was explicitly stated by council. Another special circumstances that may warrant a waiver would be the STR operator living in an adjacent property next to the STR. And this one, I think the operators are both outside of a mile radius, so that really didn't apply in this situation. And finally, the third criteria for approval is that the property owner will provide alternative effective means of assuring the goals of the regulations sought to be waived, such as alternative means will not alter the essential character of the district in which the STR is located. So considering that STRs are allowed in the R2B zone district and that the property is well maintained and well cared for and does have like really positive reviews on Airbnb and so forth, we don't think the character of the neighborhood would be impacted. However, there were no real alternative effective means that had been established to meet this standard, staff felt. So overall, staff would recommend that this waiver be denied for these reasons that I went through. And then in your I want to make a note in your packet. It says that the suggested motion is that waiver case be approved. So that's just making a note that kind of sounds at odds with the staff report because all the motions need to be made in the affirmative. So I just wanted to clear that up.
Board questions for staff at this time?
So the waiver is only needed because the owner doesn't live on site. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other board members? Any other questions for staff at this point?
Yeah, I have one. So my understanding from reading the Title V stuff for the actual document that the city council put out, all of these applications are for a 1-year period and they renew after a year? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yep.
And so would that be the same case for this if we approved it now? Would it then come back in a year?
No, not in this situation. If the STR waiver is approved and the property hasn't changed ownership, which in effect would void the STR permit, this would run with the STR permit as long as they continue to renew it annually.
Any other questions at this point for staff? All right. Mr. Sampson, I think we are done with you for the time being. If the applicant could come forward to testify in the case, and if you could state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath, please.
Okay, Sam Cain. I'm the owner of the property, 4295 South Lincoln Street.
Shelley, you're on mute.
Thank you. Mr. Cain, do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now Thomas is on mute.
Tom, you're on mute.
Mr. Cain, we have what you submitted with the packet. Do you want to give us a high level of kind of your argument for the waiver or anything else we should take under consideration?
Yeah, sure. So I am not a investor that's going to come in and buy the entire block of houses. I am a local resident, grew up in, was born in Inglewood, saved up enough money to buy a house with the intent of being a real estate investor, and took the risk of purchasing the home and then also utilizing the Airbnb platform to help that investment along. It has been super beneficial in the sense that it's helped me progress just as an individual with my goals in real estate, but then also I own and operate a construction company, Cain Construction, which is less than 2 miles from my home, that house, that makes me an integral part of the community, whether I'm paying taxes through the property or taxes through my business. I feel as though, you know, I'm helping the economy quite a bit with this particular property. On top of that, more importantly, there are a significant number of individuals that use the place specifically to stay while they're attending the hospital, where they have hospital, people in the hospital that are their family members. They've had heart attacks. We've had serious surgeries. The list is quite long. There are also people that don't tell me what they're there for. They could be there for the hospital as well. I mean, there's a strong possibility that many past guests were here for indeed the hospital visit, and we don't know. It is definitely used in that sense. So those are the things that are a benefit. And then on top of that, if the waiver was granted, the city then does collect a tax on it. My schedule is full. I have a full schedule, Airbnb schedule, that the city stands to make a bunch of money on, or, at least their percentage. So the list of pros are significant. The cons are non-existent. And at this point in time, it is what it is. We've gone through the hoops to get the waiver application submitted. We put our signs up. We've gotten our place up ready for inspection. We've met all the needs and criteria. And we feel as though the property should be allowed. It's been really positive. There has been like almost zero negative aspects from this. So, whether it's the income for the economy or the community where our neighbors have positive reinforcing interactions with the guest, or even the hospital. There's very few things that there are zero things that I could come up with that would state that why you shouldn't give me the waiver. If anybody can come up with some, obviously there's the list of requirements there that Eric so kindly went through. But other than that, I think that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. Board members, do you have questions for Mr. Cain at this point? Mr. Cain, when did you purchase the property?
2017.
Any other questions for Mr. Cain at this point from the board?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Cain. So our struggle with all these cases is that we don't get to grant things because we think they're good ideas or they're good for the city, or we think they're providing a needed service. We're stuck with the criteria we have before us. And my struggle would be with the first criteria, something special and peculiar about the property that's different from other, if it's R2B, other R2B properties. And if you could help us by articulating what you think is your best argument for meeting that first criteria, that would help.
And so I guess just for clarification, what's the criteria for the R2B? It's just zoning?
No. The first criteria is that special circumstances or conditions peculiar to the specific short-term rental or property owner exists that do not apply generally to all short-term rental businesses or enterprises. Examples of special circumstances may include property located in district zone for commercial or medical uses, property owned and managed by a medical facility or hospital, property owned and managed by an abutting property owner and regularly rented in support of patient care.
Right. So I guess, if we're going to draw a line in the sand, there's a line drawn within the neighborhoods that dictates those properties fall within that zoning area for the commercial use. And, we're not far from the hospital. It's like super close. If you look on the map, we're like right down the street. There's one criteria that could be delineated. If we're talking about a line in the sand, to me, it's just silly. And then living a mile away, I think, was the other criteria. There has to be a mile. What was the particular distance that the owner operator had to be? What's the abutment requirement? Does it literally be like right next to it? That's a question.
Yeah, there's an abutment, or there's the 24-hour maintenance manager. Those are, but again, this is the stuff that the city has built in. I mean, we've got to wrap it around the 3 criteria that we can only, and the first one's always the hard one, just like in the house before. What makes the property special as opposed to a property that's a block away that would be the same kind of rental?
Yeah. Well, I host lots of guests that stay at the hospital. That would be the only thing that I could grasp onto that you guys would need to fill that criteria, is I have a long list of guests that have stayed at the hospital. That would be it. If you're looking at number 1, go look at the reviews. I've supplied half dozen of them. That's just a small sample. Yeah, and then we have a co-host, which is my mother. She lives less than 2 miles away and manages the property. Not that that fits any of their criteria, but
right.
Yeah.
Board, other questions for the applicant at this time?
Do you have a maximum number of guests that you allow there or not?
Yeah, only sleeping space for 4, 2 bedrooms, 2 people per bedroom.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant at this point from the board? All right. Mr. Cain, I think we're done with you for the time being. Shelley, are there any persons present? Do we need to check if there's anyone in favor or opposition?
Check with Nancy first.
Yep, there's Nancy.
I'm here alone again. There is no one here to speak in favor or against within the community room.
Thank you, Nancy, for going and sitting by yourself each month. And Shelley, there's no one else online for this, correct?
There is. Yep,
Okay.
Miss Williamson.
Hi, Miss Williamson.
Hi.
What are your comments for this, addressing this case?
I need to swear her in if she, you, turn your camera on, Miss Williamson.
I would love to, if I knew how. I only just downloaded this. Is it, let me see.
I think you almost had it.
Right there.
Hey.
You can raise your right hand, please.
Oh,
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Tammy Williamson, 4198 South Washington.
Thank you.
Ms. Williamson, what your thoughts, why you want to speak for or against this, please?
I'm speaking against. I'm recommending that Sam Cain short-term rental waiver be denied, as the rules are clear that he must be living on the property, and he is not. To approve him will render the whole residency requirement useless, because if you give one kid a cookie, you're going to have to give all the kids a cookie. And I really believe it will open the city up to lawsuits. Furthermore, I recommend his license be revoked because he lied on his application, saying it's a residency required. You have to live there. And he's been running it and he hasn't been living there. And literally everyone else defines primary residence as the owner living in the house. And also, you know, he cherry picks his reviews. I've seen many of his reviews that said the house was filthy. And unless he has signed affidavits from all these hospital people, you can't rely on that as fact. And also, during the entirety of 2018, when he first opened in his first year, it was his short-term rental that stunk up the entire neighborhood with pot smoke because he was hosting all the pot tourists. And that's the reason I don't go to Starbucks anymore, because of his house. I live right near there. Inglewood needs families in single-family homes, not motels. We need families there to put their kids in our schools that we just spent a lot of money building up, and not a short-term rental that's a hindrance to the community and has a negative impact on his neighbors' property values. And especially now with COVID, it's not really smart to be putting his neighbors and the neighborhood and our whole town at risk by having a transient population coming and going all the time.
Thank you, ma'am. Board, any questions? And Ms. Williamson, real quick, we don't have the power over the license. That's a city issue. We have a very narrow scope for this board.
I understand. I'm putting it out there.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
I mean,
Wait, this is not, I'm sorry, we can't turn this into a debate. I'm sorry.
just flat out lies.
Staff, are there any additional comments from the staff?
No, staff has no other comments at this time.
Board members, do you have any additional questions for staff at this time? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. For board discussion, I need a motion and a second.
I have a question. Is Dugan on the line?
He is. He's muted.
Here I am.
Dugan, did I understand Eric to say that if we're going to make a motion, it's got to be in the affirmative?
I believe that is correct. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the ordinance right now. So it says under F, it's not saying that, but I think you would have to make a motion in the affirmative and then have everyone vote, much like you do with a variance. Yes. So all motions are in the affirmative.
And if no one will make that motion, just the waiver request fails for lack of a motion?
Yes, it would.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right, so do I have a motion to discuss?
I'm going to make the motion for the purposes of discussion and voting so we can kind of get our thoughts on the record. So I move that, let's see, a waiver be granted from the primary residency requirement for approval and operation of a short-term rental in the R2B zone in the city of Inglewood. For the property located at 4295 South Lincoln Street, Inglewood, Colorado. This is a waiver to section 531-4 D2 of the Inglewood Municipal Code.
Do I have a second for discussion?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for discussion.
So I indicated this with my question. I know the city went through quite a process to shape the short-term rental ordinance that it wanted, it came up with what we have, which seems to require something pretty special that would not be similar for, you know, any property in a certain residential zone district that is pretty close to Swedish or Craig. So I think this, unfortunately for the applicant, who sounds like he has worked hard to make a nice business working that serves a need, we are limited in the scope of what we can allow. And I don't think we're following the criteria if we allow this sort of waiver.
Yeah, I
there
mean,
was-
go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, there was reference to lines in the sand, and those are the lines that City Council has drawn for us. I was struggling with any special circumstances because any property in one of these zoning districts between this location and the hospital would fall under the special circumstances that were outlined for us. So I could not see those as special or peculiar to this property or this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I remember when staff told us that we were going to take this on, that this was going to come in front of our board, and how much I thought I would enjoy that with this kind of waiver system. And I just don't, it amazes me that I guess we have to have some relief, but the way it's written, I don't see where anything is really could ever be that special. Any other thoughts on this?
I mean, it seems very narrow what we can and can't accept. And I don't think these criteria are met. Certainly not provable that it's really a medical use, and that's why it's there essentially.
I mean, though it is a little broader than that. It doesn't say only, you know, specifically tied to medical uses. They've given us this special circumstances criterion, and I don't know much more. I don't know what special is until we see it. But if it applies to a lot of properties in the general area, then I don't think it's special.
Yeah, I just appreciate City Council putting us through this. Any other discussion on this? All right, Ms. Warwick, if you could call for the vote, please. And for a review, since the motion was in the affirmative, a yes would be to grant the waiver, a no would be to refuse the waiver. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Perfect. Thank you, attorney.
Ms. Hoffman?
I'm voting no. I do not believe it meets any of the criteria. Criteria number one, there was no evidence presented that there were special circumstances or conditions peculiar to this specific short-term rental or the property owner that would not generally apply to all short-term rental businesses or enterprises. And for criteria number two, I do believe the waiver would weaken the general purpose of the chapter, which was to ensure that short-term rentals are owner-occupied. And that third, that criteria is also not met in that no alternative means were established.
Mr. Taylor?
Voted no for the similar reasons.
Mr. Thompson?
I vote no for the similar reasons.
Mr. Friesen?
I vote no for the reasons stated.
Ms. Schmitz,
I vote no for the reasons stated.
Mr. Rieger,
Voted no for the reasons stated.
Chair Finn.
I also voted no for the reasons stated due to our criteria that we have to meet.
7 noes, the waiver is not granted.
So this case is closed. Staff, what is on the radar for our future?
Nothing in October.
All right. Council, anything?
I have nothing to add for this evening's meeting.
Thank you for your input, as usual.
You're welcome.
Board's choice. Anyone on the board have anything? All right. We stand adjourned, and perhaps we will see you guys in 2 months. Maybe it'll be in person, or we'll try.
Can I get my permit fee back?
No, sir. That's a question for the city. We don't. Yeah.
You guys had the chance to go back on this, but
Sir, I'm sorry. We can't.
yeah.
The meeting's adjourned. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
Thank you, sir.
appreciate zero help from the city. You guys suck.
Thank you, sir. We'll take that under advisement. All right. I want to thank the board once again for a wonderful evening and your time and your efforts for this. If we can ever get together for anything, beers on me. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.